Alright. Waves of War post-mortem. Um, I haven't really prepared a script for this. It's not going to be super formal. I'm just going to go off the cuff, other than what you see on screen. I think that's how I want it to be. That'll give me the best chance to be the most honest with my reactions to what happened, um, what went well and what didn't go well. So I'll talk as I kind of go through it. Starting with the pros, I guess the first pro was that the milestone assessment, the ability to add, remove, modify tasks at the end of a given milestone based on the project's needs. Yeah, so one thing that worked pretty well, and this happened often by milestone 2 and moving on, was the ability to modify the task list, assess the task list, what was done, what still needed to be done, and being able to look at the data at those given milestones and assess whether the tasks for the next milestone made sense, if they didn't make sense anymore, um, if we wanted to move those tasks to the next milestone. Um, Being able to assess that and have time to assess that after the day, because so after the classes on Monday when the milestones are presented, we would have a meeting on Monday, kind of like a mini post-mortem of what happened in the previous milestone, and then go over what we think is going to happen in the next milestone and changes that we need to make. And then by Tuesday, 8 p.m., when we have the second meeting of the week, that's when all of the tasks and all the requirements for those tasks for the next milestone are finalized, which gave good time for reflection and design for what needs to get done. And then, of course, people start working on those tasks from then on. So that's something that worked pretty well. We managed to get a pretty good product by the end because we didn't stick to a very strict schedule of the tasks, which is kind of paradoxical, but it kind of worked. Second pro, draw IO. Yes, designs were very useful and easy to implement. I was very impressed. So draw IO, I can actually show this too, because I have it here. I was very impressed with the software of Draw.io and how it was implemented into the project. What you're seeing here is the design for all of the harbor stuff, and this goes into the battle scene and the dock scene. And it's very easy to edit and adjust and add asset lists to this. And what's probably the best part is I can just drop this document in the Google Drive that everybody uses, and they can click on it and open in Draw.io, and then they immediately have dynamic real-time access to it. So if I'm in here and someone else is in here, we can see the changes as we're changing it. Very similar to any Google Doc that might be in there. And with this, I was able to not only pretty efficiently say how big things are supposed to be, where buttons are supposed to send you. For example, all of the arrows, triangles are buttons. These buttons send you to D1. So it sends you to this page. And this whole section would be D2. I won't spend too much time on this, but it was very useful. And what you see basically is what got done, and it can be reflected when you see the gameplay. For context, when you play, this is the harbor scene. When you play it, there's the upgrade button. There's the quad of upgrade buttons for each of the ships. And with this, I can redesign it at will and get it implemented pretty efficiently in that pipeline. Another example are visualizations. It also helps with visualizations. So for example, this was all of the movement patterns that the programming team could use to implement the movements and the movement upgrades. Movement upgrades level 0 to 1 to 2 to 3. This is where they're allowed to go, etc. And attacks. You can show attack patterns and what they're supposed to be. Battleship hits 4 random, cruiser 3 and a 3x3, sub across the field, destroyer. Its target point 1+1, etc. For 3, meeting frequency. Yeah, so I kind of touched on this before. We had 3 meetings scheduled every week. We had one Monday 8 p.m., Tuesday 8 p.m., and Friday 8 p.m., which worked really well. That any other days probably would have not been as efficient. So here's how it kind of worked. So on Monday, that was the kind of the mini post-mortem of that milestone, and then Tuesday was the follow-up, which defined all of the new tasks and requirements for the next milestone. And then Friday is kind of a progress checkup, see how things are doing, see if anybody has questions or needs refinements to the requirements, or has concerns about where the milestone is heading, etc. These meetings would often last an hour, hour and a half, especially in milestone 2, milestone 3. Come milestone 4, meetings dampened down to an hour to 30 minutes, but never less than 30 minutes. We had pretty efficient and effective meetings when we had them. The only problem was probably we needed more, what's the word for it? Shoot, I'm blanking. Messages, we'll say, in the chat. More people coming to the meetings, because I think people were forgetting sometimes. And not everybody could show up at any given meeting. But for those who did come, it made life a lot easier to have many meetings to go over. And we would often give reflections of what happened in the meeting in the chat as well, for anybody that missed it. For cons, don't let the small text fool you. There were plenty of cons. Number 1 being the QA time was slightly inadequate, as was the scope of the tasks. So we had a system where final builds would be implemented on Sunday by 8 p.m. This was like milestone 2 and on. Actually, milestone 2 was 5 p.m. Milestone 3 was 8 p.m. on. And then QA had until 8 p.m. Monday to QA confirm everything. Well, there were problems with all of that being done in time. And part of it is the requirements for that. There's kind of a disconnect on the requirements for all of the tasks, and it made it difficult to confirm. For example, I should have specified in the requirements where, like, if it's not in the build, where those files should be found by QA. The pipelines weren't established well enough for that process to be streamlined, if that makes sense. Um, Often we had QA um, working overtime, in fact, and the hours estimate was underestimated, um, which I'm at fault for that. I should have been more specific in helping create the um, streamlined process for requirements for any given task. Um, we'll get into that a little bit more on some of these other cons, but another con was the pressure on the stragglers was inadequate. Speaking to myself, um, I should have been more of a leader when it comes to people who were falling behind or not delivering on quality. Um, for the first 4 or 5 days in Milestone 1, we didn't know that Andy, who was our project manager from last month, he wasn't going to be here this month. So at that point, I basically just stepped into the role, but I didn't know really what I was getting into until I like come milestone 3 or milestone 4 when I'm looking at our burn down and our tasks, and it's like still a lot more to go. And part of that is not putting pressure and not meeting regularly with um, people who are not completing tasks either on time or at all. Which there were a couple, but confrontation is not really my thing. That's probably a weakness I would have as a leader, is not being able to um, bring up problems with people's work. Not quite the right words. I mean, there's plenty of people on the team that I give feedback to, and I've critiqued work. I've sent back for nitpicky revisions. But for people not delivering, I should have been more on top of that. For Con 3, disconnect on task and task requirement and confusing communication between fields. Delineation of work should have been stricter. Yeah, so a lot of times people would have multiple different tasks. So you'd have one person who was doing QA work and programming work and design work. Like me, for an example, I was basically the designer who designed most of the systems, but I was also doing managerial stuff and programming tasks. I had several resources who were doing kind of sound design and QA work, and the mixing and matching of all of the roles would not only lead to some confusion, it made conflicts with other requirements and tasks. So the most recent anecdotal example would be that I had a resource who was implementing sound, basically all through M1 through M4. He had audio clips in all of the scripts, but come M4, when in the main menu we have sound effects and music background that should be playing in the background when a scene loads. We needed a sound, basically a SFX manager for that. And well, all of the sounds suddenly got jumbled up, and the naming convention wasn't quite clear. So that created a lot of confusion, and it created a lot of reworkings at the last minute, when really the pipelines should have been clearer from the start. I could probably get into a lot more on that, but I feel like I'm already going over time on this. But basically, there needed to be stronger pipeline definition of where everybody's work was supposed to be, what they were supposed to do. The tasks themselves should have been defining better where all of the stuff should have ended up. And another, speaking of task requirements, another big issue probably was that I needed to be the primary managerial person defining these requirements with input, but I delineated or gave out the task of defining requirements to my lead programmer. I did some and he did a lot of others, and the fact that we had two different people defining requirements created disconnect on what those requirements for those tasks really should have been, and it made it a bit more difficult for the QA to confirm it, because again, a lot of those requirements were in engine. So I should have defined the pipelines easier and then, or better, and then all of the requirement writing would have been a lot easier to do, and the QA would have had a lot simpler time. For reflections, first and foremost, I'd have the clear role delineations for future projects. I'd have a designer, one person designing. Well, not maybe not one person, but the role of designer would be 100% to a person, and project manager, programmer, sound engineer, QA, etc. In future projects, if someone's going to be a project manager, they are project manager first and foremost. Programmer, same thing. And defining those pipelines and where work is supposed to be would be at the onset and the initial catalyst for work. My second reflection, I would bring Draw.io into new projects and get everyone involved with it. Yes, definitely. The Draw.io software there might be better things, but what I like about this software is kind of its simplicity and its ease of use and its shareability with people. Again, there might be better things, but as of right now, I'm not aware of them. I could be made, but I would bring this into any future project. And my final reflection would be to meet regularly and individually. So what I mean by that is, yes, those 3 meetings, the more times we meet, the better, really. Every time we had a meeting, we discussed things we didn't know. We found out and cleared up confusion, and all sorts of things got resolved in those 3 meetings. None of them felt superfluous. And individually, I would, going into future projects, probably meet with people one-on-one, especially as someone in a leadership position. not even just for people straggling, but to um, go over the requirements with them and the tasks that they're doing in more detail, just to make sure everybody's on the same page. And it could be in a much easier, more relaxed setting than a kind of a group setting, which both are probably required. So yeah, that's my post-mortem. Uh, a lot of things went well, and a lot of things suffered due to inexperience, probably in the role of project manager. Myself, I've been in leadership positions in much smaller indie games in the past. 1, 2, or 3 people, 11 people. This experience was very new for me, and I've never created a schedule and task list and implemented it into the project. I learned a lot in the past few weeks, probably more in leadership than I have in years. So it was a lot. But yeah, that was my post-mortem. There's probably a lot I'm missing, but this is what I've got. This is the most honest reflection I could give at the moment. So thanks for listening.